The NBA is mostly a showcase for the best athletes in the world, but sometimes it's also good for a little comic relief. From botched plays to nasty posters and crossovers, get ready to laugh, wince, and shake your head in disbelief as we look at some of the most embarrassing moments in the 2023 NBA season. Let's get the ball rolling with this ankle breaker by Kevin Durant. KD had a history of making defenders look foolish, but that doesn't make it any less embarrassing for Daniel Gafford. Durant put on a series of moves that made Gafford's body be in two places at once, which is impossible. The result was a play so humiliating I wouldn't be surprised if Gafford didn't show his face on the internet for months. While Gafford almost tore his groin in half trying to guard the best offensive player on the planet, there was no excuse for this Luka Doncic out-of-bounds play. Luka attempted to throw the inbounds pass to JaVale McGee, but he obviously did not care enough to see where he was stepping. You know it's bad when even JaVale thought this was a bonehead play. At least there was no harm done on that one, because the next one was straight up murder. Anybody who follows the NBA knows what Aaron Gordon can do up in the air, but it seemed like Landry Shamet did not get the memo. Yep, the refs almost ruined the party by initially calling it a charge, but thankfully, the replays prevailed. It's not every day we see somebody's soul nearly leave his body in front of national TV and the whole world. Somewhere out there, Dwayne Wade still gave that dunk a 9 though. Speaking of D-Wade, the soon-to-be Hall of Famer was a minority owner of the Utah Jazz since 2021. So I'm wondering if he had a hand on the Rudy Gobert trade that shook the NBA. If he did, I completely understand. It's an eyesore seeing a 7'2" giant embarrass himself every other game on plays like this. Gobert has seemingly sucked all the promise the Wolves had in the 2022 season. Not to mention it took 1 million draft picks just to get him. As you know, there is nothing more humiliating than not delivering on a confident promise. Just ask Grant Williams. With the game tied between the Celtics and the Cavs, Williams had a chance to give Boston the win at the free throw line with only 0.8 seconds left. Grant could have just made one, but instead he promised a trash-talking Donovan Mitchell, "I'm gonna make both." Well, he didn't, and the Cavs pulled out the win in overtime. That's not a story to tell your grandkids now, eh, Grant? But to his credit, Williams managed to troll and laugh at his own expense. When a Twitter user posted a question about "I'm not him" moments, Williams had the following response from his own account. If Grant Williams humbly dealt with the situation by laughing at his demise, one player managed to do the complete opposite and made a fool of himself in front of the entire basketball universe. It's Dillon Brooks' "poke the bear" comment directed at LeBron James. Following the Grizzlies' 103-93 Game 2 win over the Lakers, Brooks called LeBron old and said, "I don't respect no one until they come and give me 40 points." Needless to say, that didn't age well for Brooks and the rest of the Grizzlies. Prior to Game 3, LeBron had something private to say to Dillon, and it kinda messed Brooks' rhythm up. He only averaged 9 points, 3.3 rebounds, and 1.5 assists on 28% shooting from the floor, including 22% from beyond the arc in the last 4 games of the series. So in a span of a week, his highlights from those games included an ejection, a 40-point beatdown in Game 6, and making himself look like a clown in front of everyone. Plus, he had this long walk of shame to endure. Dillon brought unnecessary attention to himself, and now he got served a big slice of humble pie. Brooks may actually dance his way to Shanghai this offseason, as it was reported that the Grizzlies have no interest whatsoever in bringing him back under any circumstances. One of the people Dillon Brooks had beef with is Draymond Green, who, coincidentally, has been looking for a big payday with Golden State this offseason. But as impactful as Draymond is for the Warriors, the front office might change their minds after this play. Green reiterated many times he wanted the bag and had no problem looking elsewhere if he couldn't get it in the Bay Area. Is this his way of saying he wanted to be a Laker? Whoops. What would Steph Curry think of that? Speaking of Steph Curry, the guy ruined basketball for everybody because somehow he inspired people to be just like him. And nobody, and I mean nobody, can be Steph Curry except Steph Curry. Ever. Won't anyone say that to Kyle Kuzma? Confidence is not a good thing sometimes, because knowing Kuz, he'll keep shooting and bricking them except on his streaky nights, which aren't that many. You know it's embarrassing when your teammates are laughing at you, not with you. Do you know who else thinks he's Steph Curry? It's his teammate Jordan Poole. For some reason, Poole thought it was okay to shoot from 30 feet with 10 seconds left on the clock, the game on the line, and the Splash Brothers on the floor with him. Needless to say, Steve Kerr and the Warriors have a Poole problem they should clean up. They better do something about it because they've committed $128 million to a guy who averaged 8.3 points, 1.8 rebounds, and 4.2 assists on 35, 25, 75 shooting splits on his recent playoff series. That means they couldn't just give up on him, or could they? Well, maybe they should ask Kelly Olynyk for some tips after he quit on a play and tried to deflect blame to avoid further embarrassment. So, that's how it felt being stuck on an island after a shipwreck. Having a quick-footed guy like Halliburton on offense against somebody like KO on defense is usually not a good combination. Here's a play with the wackiest combination ever: a flop, a shimmy, and a brick, which resulted in a heavy dose of basketball shame. I don't know which one was worse, the long-distance flop or the shimmy brick. Either way, both guys be pulling their signature moves. Talking about signature moves, we witnessed a hell of a lot in the NBA for years. Kareem's skyhook, MJ's fadeaway, Dirk's one-legged jumper, Hakeem's dream shake, and Luke Cornett's cornet contest. Wait, what? There's actually a method to this madness, and the stats back it up. According to a report, only 28% of threes found their way to the bottom of the net whenever Luke Cornett does his contest. I'd be too hip-hop and embarrassed trying that move myself. But hey, to each his own. Continuing to the theme of defense, there aren't many who do it like Alex Caruso. He rarely gets caught in screens, and he's often in an excellent position whether as the primary defender or a weak side helper. In short, he's a one-man defensive wrecking crew, but even the wrecker gets wrecked sometimes. Watch this. Caruso did the "I better get up before everybody sees me" move there. But it's too late for the bald mamba. For Jalen Brunson, that's about the cleanest ankle breaker you'll ever see. After I tipped my hat to JB for that filthy crossover move, there's no scenario where I'd do that for this year's All-Star game. Even Michael Malone, who coached Team LeBron, called it the worst basketball ever played, and Jaylen Brown likened the game to a freaking layup line. The fans wanted the best players to gut it out and care for the game by playing some defense, but no. If the participating players like Brown felt like it wasn't a real basketball game, then I don't know what fans should think about this year's All-Star game. A total embarrassment or an utter failure. Either way, Dr. Naismith must be rolling in his grave. In this next play, you could either be embarrassed or proud of it if you're Kyrie Irving, but it could be somewhere in between. After all, imitation is the highest form of flattery. But at the same time, Jaylen Brown may have given Kyrie a dose of his own medicine just to spite him. On the other hand, thinking about how Uncle Drew inspired these young bloods puts a big smile on my face, and maybe Kyrie was smiling inside too. If Jaylen Brown was an excellent student on and off the court, the same couldn't be said of Andre Drummond. Drummond had the best seats in the house watching the best players do snatchbacks, stepbacks, and Euro steps, which is why it's understandable why the big man wanted to do guard stuff in a fast break situation. Sometimes, though, the spirit is eager, but the flesh is weak, which is why Drummond came up with a whole new basketball move, the Euro step airball. It's an A for effort, but F for execution. Next time, just flush it down, big guy. But just because you can dunk, it's not a guarantee you're going to make it, as Kyle Kuzma's second appearance on this list attests. To make matters worse, the Sixers went on an 18-2 run after that botched play and never recovered. I can't believe the Wizards are looking for a long-term commitment and ready to pay this guy the max, something that the Pistons should be looking to do with Jaden Ivey. Ivey made the all-rookie second team with averages of 16.3 points, 3.9 rebounds, and 5.2 assists in 74 games. But in one of those outings, he pulled off one of basketball's mortal sins, calling a timeout when there was none left. That eventually put the game out of reach for the Pistons, which is still what they wanted, given their tanking hard for Wemby. You don't want to make a habit out of it and must establish a winning culture even if you're going to the lottery. That being said, it's worth noting that it's not the first time this happened to a team from Michigan. It looked like Jaden heard incoming footsteps and panicked, which sounded a lot like Desmond Bane's trash talk to LeBron James in a January 2022 game. After making a three in transition, Bane turned to LeBron and said, "Them footsteps ain't scaring nobody." James' photographic memory always recalls things, and we all know Bron turns into the boogeyman when mad and engaged. Desmond Bane had to learn the hard way, and the King made sure he was reminded twice. First in a regular season game a year later, and then another in Game 1 of their first-round series in the 2023 playoffs. Whose footsteps are you hearing now, DB? That's why you don't talk smack to someone who has a legitimate case to be the basketball GOAT. One player who's climbing up the ladder of the greatest centers of all time is Nikola Jokic. He's so good, he's already been a two-time MVP, and Shaquille O'Neal gave him the nickname Big Honey, which is actually pretty sweet. One basketball-related thing he couldn't do very well, though, is jump very high, which happens to be his teammate Michael Porter Jr.'s asset. So one time, MPJ decided to show off his 42-inch vertical, at the expense of the Joker? It's obvious that Jokic wasn't too happy about getting hit with friendly fire, but as long as the ball went in, he'll be fine. What's not fine, though, was for the refs to miss a blatant call and for the best player on the planet to act like a toddler in front of national TV and a worldwide audience. It's crossing two hurdles in one leap, only in humiliating fashion. That's exactly what happened in this crazy sequence in a Lakers-Celtics rivalry game on January 29, 2023. While the refs really had no business missing that fly swat by Jason Tatum, LeBron was also way better than throwing a childish tantrum at that moment. Bron usually takes the high road in these instances, but not that time. As if that outburst wasn't humiliating enough, James, for some reason, wanted to turn into Hulk Hogan and rip his jersey on the bench. It's a good thing Nike made their jerseys tear-resistant, but it's actually kind of sad and funny watching Bron do that stuff. And following his lead, the Lakers' performance in overtime was a total embarrassment as well. How about the refs? Well, at least it's not the Tim Donaghy magnitude, so I'll give them a pass. After all, these things happen to the best of them.